On the morning of August 4th, 1964, I began my first full-time employment in the Pentagon, working under Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara. My very first day on the job, all hell broke loose. A courier came running in with a flash cable saying that American warships were under attack in the Tonkin Gulf off the coast of North Vietnam. And I was getting these because my boss was already down the hall with McNamara picking targets to retaliate against North Vietnam. Minute after minute, more cables came in. 3 torpedoes have been fired. 7, we are taking evasive action. At about 1:30 our time, comes a new cable from the commodore of the 2 ships. Hold everything, in effect. All previous reports of torpedoes are in question.
Renewed hostile actions against United States ships on the high seas in the Gulf of Tonkin have today required me to order the military forces of the United States to take action in reply.
Within days, it was clearer and clearer that there had been no attack.
I shall immediately request the Congress to pass a resolution.
President Johnson was determined to prevent a communist victory in South Vietnam. He twisted the facts of the Tonkin Gulf incident to persuade Congress to give him unlimited authority to use military force. He then launched a war that would last another 11 years.
By a number of hostile vessels.
Senator Fulbright, you moved the Tonkin resolution through the Senate. Did you know anything about this?
I accepted the story given to us by the President and Mr. McNamara and Mr. Rusk, and I believe General Wheeler. I had no reason at that time and under those circumstances to doubt the validity, the truthfulness of this whole operation.
We still seek no wider war.
No wider war? As I found out day by day in the Pentagon, that was our highest priority. Preparing a wider war which we expected to take place immediately after the election.
It's a war that I think ought to be fought by the boys of Asia to help protect their own land. And for that reason, I haven't chosen to enlarge the war.
And that was a conscious lie. We all knew that inside the government, and not one of us told the press or the public or the electorate during that election. It was a well-kept secret by thousands and thousands of people, including me.
Much has been written about the war in Vietnam, but little has made us understand what it is really like. My guest today, David Halberstam.
I had a radio program that was syndicated across the country. I was down in Washington, D.C. at the time doing interviews of congressmen and people in the government. And a mutual friend had offered to host a party on my behalf. And he was inviting his friends. And he said, there's one friend I'll invite, but stay away from him. He's brilliant, but dangerous. Meaning that he was quite a ladies' man, having just recently gotten divorced. He rang the doorbell, and they were those sunken lights from the ceiling, and they hit his blue eyes, and I just went, ah, like this. He was so handsome.
I just thought of her at that time as above my dating class. I worked every Saturday, a full day, that's 12 hours. And every Sunday, half a day. I did think of calling her up when I had my first day off from the Pentagon and said, I have tomorrow off, and would you like to go see the cherry blossoms?
And I said, no, I'm covering the peace rally for the radio program.
This is my first day off. I've been working on the war now for 70 hours a week. You can't really ask me to spend it at an anti-war rally. We marched around the White House. I was carrying her a heavy tape recorder, and I remember thinking, I hope this is not a still photograph in the Washington Post tomorrow where I am, because it's going to be a little hard to explain.
And I bumped into some friends who were liberal, radical friends, and the husband said, how can you be going out with somebody who's working on Vietnam in the Pentagon?
Early 1965, the Vietnam War was about to expand and I was one of its planners. I had received orders from Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara to gather examples of atrocities perpetrated by the Viet Cong. The Secretary hoped such intelligence would convince President Johnson to launch a systematic bombing campaign against North Vietnam. I had voiced my personal opposition to the tactic of bombing the North, but an order from McNamara for fast action was like an order from God. I had a whole staff in Vietnam collecting data for me. I told the colonel on the other end of the hotline that it all had to be in for the president by 7 the next morning. I needed details of the atrocities by the Viet Cong anywhere in Vietnam. Above all, I wanted gory details of any injuries to Americans. I told the colonel, I need blood.
In the early 60s, Dan Ellsberg was a leading, if not the leading, young war thinker.
The atomic bomb had changed so much, and the military knew that they needed fresh thinking. And they established RAND and deliberately located it on the west coast of the United States so that it would be beyond the reach of anybody in Washington who wanted to meddle in it. And essentially, people were encouraged to think new thoughts, to think big.
My work at Harvard was on decision-making under uncertainty. At the RAND Corporation, I've been studying the highest stakes hypothetical gamble in human history, whether or not to launch nuclear missiles on the basis of ambiguous warning.
He was focused on the question, if you had to go to war, how to do it in the least dangerous way. Who would make the decisions? How would the decisions get communicated? And what were the options available to the president?
About 4 a.m., I got what I was looking for. The colonel told me we've just gotten info that 2 American advisors appeared to have been captured and killed. I asked for graphic details to make it concrete, dramatic. The colonel told me that their bodies